Ciao, and welcome to Immersion Travel Italy, where we don't just visit Italy, we experience it. Welcome to episode 10 of the Regional Capitals of Italy series, and today we're going to slow things down. In this series, we started in the north. We cover Trento, Aosta, Milan, Venice, Genoa, Trieste, Bologna, and also Florence. Today we're heading to Assisi, a place of calm and pilgrimage. We spent time here in early December, and Assisi felt almost suspended in time. The crowds were gone, the air was cold, but crisp and clear. The stone streets were quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own footsteps echo between medieval walls. Standing before the Basilica of San Francesco, there was a stillness that was hard to describe. Still people around, but full of history, faith, and presence. Inside, the frescoes seemed even more powerful in the silence. The same was true of the Basilica of Santa Chiara. Soft winter light, quiet prayer, and the unmistakable sense that this city was built around something deeper than monuments. We walked the narrow streets, wrapped in stone for centuries, and often felt like we had the city to ourselves. Shopkeepers greeted us warmly, fireplaces flickered behind windows, and the pace of life felt gentle and intentional. In today's episode, we'll explore how Assisi became one of Italy's most important spiritual capitals, the stories of St. Francis and St. Clare, and why visiting in the quieter months can be one of the most powerful ways to experience the city. So settle in and welcome to Assisi. Assisi's story begins long before St. Francis and pilgrims, and long before the city became a symbol of peace. The earliest settlement here dates back to the Umbrians, an ancient Italic people who lived in the hilltops centuries before Rome came to power. The location mattered. Perched on the western slopes of Monte Subasio, Assisi offered a natural protection, sweeping views across the Umbrian Valley. In the 3rd century BC, Assisi was absorbed into the Roman Republic and became Assisium. Under Roman rule, the city was organized, paved, and monumentalized. Temples, forums, and civic buildings reshaped to the hilltop. Even today, there's a remarkably well-preserved Temple of Minerva, which stands at the heart of town, its classical columns quietly anchoring the piazza. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Assisi passed through centuries of instability. Lombards, Byzantines, and local rules contested control, and the city gradually transformed from a Roman town into a medieval stronghold. Stone replaced marble, defensive walls rose, and towers marked the power of the rival families. By the 12th century, Assisi was a proud and restless commune, often at war with its rival city Perugia. It was a place shaped by conflict, ambition, and rigid social divisions. And it was into this world that St. Francis of Assisi was born in 1181. Francis was the son of a wealthy cloth merchant, raised amid privilege and expectations of status. But after illness, captivity during war, and a profound spiritual awakening, he rejected his wealth entirely. His radical embrace of poverty, humility, and care for the poor challenged everything Assisi represented at the time. What followed is nothing short of transformative. Francis's message spread rapidly, first through Umbria and then across Europe. After his death in 1226, Assisi was transformed almost immediately. The city became one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in the Christian world, and just 2 years later, construction began on the Basilica of San Francesco. Artists, theologians, and pilgrims arrived from far beyond Italy's borders. A city once defined by rivalry and warfare began to be known for humility and peace. Closely connected to Francis was St. Clare of Assisi, who founded the Poor Clares and established a powerful female spiritual presence within the city. Her legacy, like Francis's, reshaped Assisi's identity, anchoring it firmly in contemplation rather than conquest. Politically, however, Assisi did not become independent or idealistic in a way that its spiritual message might suggest. From the 13th century onward, the city fell increasingly under the influence of the papacy. After periods of local self-rule and conflicting with neighboring Perugia, Assisi was gradually absorbed into the Papal States and would remain there for centuries. Under papal control, Assisi was governed by appointed officials rather than powerful merchant families or princely courts. This had a lasting impact on the city's development. Without the pressure to compete architecturally or economically with cities like Florence or Rome, Assisi changed very little. Its medieval street plan, stone buildings, and spiritual focus remain largely intact. Faith, pilgrimage, and continuity held the city together far more than ambition or expansion. During the Renaissance and early modern period, Assisi existed quietly within the Papal States. It was respected as a sacred place, but never reshaped by grand palaces or sweeping urban projects. Even as Umbria experienced artistic and political shifts, Assisi remained anchored to its Franciscan identity. The city's stability was briefly disrupted at the turn of the 19th century during the Napoleonic invasions. Yes, Napoleon again. When the Papal States were dissolved and reorganizing under French control. After Napoleon's defeat, Assisi returned to papal rule, but the old political order was already weakening. In the mid-19th century, Assisi became part of the newly unified Kingdom of Italy, marking the end of centuries of papal governance. In the modern era, the city emerged not as a political center, but as a global symbol of peace, interfaith dialogue, and spiritual reflection. Today, Assisi is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site for the rare way its history, architecture, and message remain inseparable. Assisi endured by choosing stillness over spectacle, and that choice still defines it to this day. Our walk through Assisi begins just outside the historic walls, at one of the city's ancient outer gates. Before you even step inside, pause for a moment. From here, Assisi reveals itself slowly. Stone walls rise from the hillside, layered with centuries of defense, faith, and daily life. Passing through the gate, the streets narrow almost immediately. The stone beneath your feet is worn smooth, shaped by pilgrims, merchants, and monks. The incline is gentle but constant, reminding you that Assisi is a hill town in every sense. As you walk, the city feels hushed, especially in the winter. The first stop after the gate is the Basilica of Santa Chiara, or St. Clare. It rises above the plain with its pink and white stone facade, drawn from Mount Subasio itself. The basilica is luminous but restrained, elegant without excess. We descended into the crypt where the remains of St. Clare rest. The space is intimate and deeply contemplative. Pale stone, soft lighting, clean architectural lines draw attention inward. Above, the basilica's interior reveals delicate frescoes, painted vaults, and harmony of color that feels calming rather than ornate. When we leave Santa Chiara, we continue along the main thoroughfare, weaving through residential streets and small piazzas. Second, we pass through another historic gate and arrive at the heart of civic Assisi, the Piazza del Comune. This square tells a different story. Here Roman Assisi asserts itself. The perfectly preserved facade of the Temple of Minerva dominates the piazza, its classical columns unchanged for nearly 2,000 years. Today, it functions as a church, an example of how Assisi layers history rather than replacing it. Uphill is the Cathedral of San Rufino, the city's Duomo. It's a Romanesque facade, and it's one of the finest in Umbria, decorated with symbolic carvings and rose windows that speak to medieval theology through stone. Inside, the space is calm and balanced, anchored by symmetry and soft light. This is where St. Francis and St. Clare were baptized, tying the spiritual heart of Assisi directly to its cathedral. From this piazza, it's further uphill toward the fortress, passing small chapels, artisan shops, and quiet corners. Every turn offers a new angle onto the valley or a framed view of tiled rooftops and bell towers. For lunch, we followed our guide's recommendation and went to the Ristorante Bar San Francesco, and it turned out to be one of those perfectly timed travel moments. Our tour guide had reserved a table for us, and the location was warm and inviting, especially on this cold winter day. But the real reward was the view. From the dining room, you can see the Basilica of San Francesco unfold in front of you. Its layers, its towers, and its valley in front. We settled in, ordering local cheeses to start, simple and deeply flavorful. I chose the local soup, hearty and comforting, exactly what you want after walking Assisi's stone streets in December. My husband went with a classic Umbrian meat platter, rich with regional cured meats and traditional preparations. From here, the walk naturally leads toward one of the most important spiritual sites in the world, the Basilica of St. Francis. Built into the hillside, the basilica is unlike any other church in Italy. It's not one church but two, stacked sanctuaries anchored by the tomb of St. Francis himself. We were lucky enough to enter through the Jubilee door, which enters into the lower church. The space is dim, intimate, and deeply contemplative. Thick stone pillars support low vaults, candlelight flickers through frescoed walls. The frescoes here are among the earliest and most important in Italian art. Look closely and you'll find works attributed to Cimabue, whose emotionally charged figures marked a turning point away from rigid Byzantine forms. Cimabue was actually the teacher of Giotto, who we discussed in last week's episode. Nearby are frescoes by Pietro Lorenzetti, whose scenes of the Passion are filled with human emotion and narrative depth. Side chapels unfold one by one, each with its own visual language, offering moments of discovery. At the heart of the lower church lies the crypt, where St. Francis is buried. The tomb is surrounded by rough stone and candles. Pilgrims sit here in the pews. Some kneel. The simplicity of the space reflects Francis's life and grounds you to everything you've seen above. Next, the flow is you ascend to the upper church, and the contrast is astounding. Light floods the space, the walls rise high and pale, and the church opens up toward heaven. Here you encounter one of the most celebrated fresco cycles in Western art, traditionally attributed to Giotto and his workshop. You know Giotto from our last episode. He was our Florentine who designed the campanile, or the bell tower. Along the nave, scenes of the life of St. Francis unfold like a visual biography, rendered with unprecedented realism, movement, and emotion. Figures occupy real space. Faces express feeling. Architecture feels lived in. This was revolutionary art. The frescoes did more than decorate the church. They changed the direction of art in Europe, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance. Standing here, you are in a turning point in history. One thing to know about Assisi is that while it feels connected on a map, it can be a little less than intuitive to get around on the ground. The main train station, which is called the Assisi Railway Station, is actually located outside of town in a valley near Santa Maria degli Angeli. To reach the old town, you need to take a local bus or taxi, which adds time and coordination. It's not really walkable. When we were here, we had chosen to rent a car, and it gave us more flexibility for exploring the Umbrian towns. That said, buses and trains do exist, and I'll note those options as we go. Our first stop in Umbria was actually in Orvieto, and it was on the road between Rome and Assisi. It's about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes by car from Assisi. Orvieto rises dramatically from a volcanic plateau, and the approach alone is unforgettable. We parked in the public parking that was easy to find, and we took the funicular train to get up to Orvieto, the hill town. Our first stop was the Fortezza Albornoz. This is located right next to the funicular station. Built in the 14th century under the direction of Cardinal Albornoz, the fortress was part of a network of fortifications designed to reassert papal control over central Italy. While much of the original structure no longer stands, what remains offers sweeping panoramic views across the Umbrian countryside. From here you can grasp Orvieto's strategic importance and its dramatic setting atop volcanic rock. From the fortress is an easy walk to the historic center, through the quiet streets toward Orvieto's crown jewel, the Duomo of Orvieto. The cathedral rises suddenly at the end of the street, its facade glowing with color and light. Bands of black and white marble frame vast panels of golden mosaics that shimmer as the sun moves through the sky. The mosaics are not just decorative accents, they're theological statements. Seen from the life of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the Last Judgment unfold across the surface, designed to teach, inspire, and overwhelm medieval pilgrims long before they ever step inside. Look closer and you'll see intricately carved bas-reliefs along the lower portion of the facade. These sculpted panels depict scenes from Genesis, the Tree of Jesse, Old Testament prophecy, and the Apocalypse, creating a visual journey from creation of the world to its final reckoning. The facade is narrative, symbolic, and deliberate. Inside, the atmosphere shifts. The interior is vast but restrained, striped with alternating bands of dark basalt and pale limestone. The space feels solemn and measured, and your eyes have to adjust before drawing you toward its most famous artistic treasure, the Chapel of San Brizio. This chapel contains one of the most powerful fresco cycles of the Renaissance, painted by Luca Signorelli between 1499 and 1504. His work here is bold, muscular, and uncompromising. The frescoes depict the apocalypse, resurrection of the dead, hell, and the Last Judgment with extraordinary intensity. Bodies twist and strain in three-dimensional space. Figures rise from the earth with startling physical realism. Angels and demons and the damned collide in scenes filled with movement, anatomy, and emotional force. Signorelli's fascination with the human body is unmistakable. While we were in Orvieto, we stopped for lunch, based on the recommendation from our guide, at the Ristorante Maurizio Martinelli, and I genuinely recommend this. This was the best meal we had in Umbria. It was an experience. The meal begins with a tasting of local olive oils and balsamic vinegars, offering a real introduction to Umbrian flavors before you even look at the menu. From there, dishes focus on regional specialties, prepared simply and beautifully, letting the quality of the ingredients and the wine speak for themselves. It's the kind of restaurant that feels rooted in the place. Local cuisine, thoughtful pacing, and a sense that you're being welcomed by the family. After the morning of walking to the fortress and the cathedral and the historic streets, this was exactly the kind of meal Orvieto calls for. I also recommend Orvieto for some shopping, especially if you're interested in local craftsmanship rather than souvenir shops. As you wander through the historic center, you'll find artisan studios and family-run shops selling handcrafted ceramics, leather goods, paper, textiles, and locally made food products. Many of these crafts are tied directly to the region, shaped by Orvieto's volcanic soil and long artisanal traditions. This is not mass-produced Italy. These pieces are made slowly, and you're often watching them make them as you stand in the store. You can talk to the artists, learn how things are produced, and take something home that really reflects where you've been. We also had the blessing of the Christmas market in town. Our next day trip from Assisi was Spoleto, about 45 minutes by car, and immediately it felt different in scale and energy. Spoleto is larger, more layered, and dramatically positioned where the Apennine foothills begin to rise. It's a city shaped by movement, armies, and power, yet softened by art and landscape. Spoleto's history stretches back to Roman times, and traces of the past are woven directly into the modern city. Ancient roads, arches, and foundations sit along medieval towers and Renaissance palaces, creating a sense that Spoleto has grown by accumulation rather than reinvention. Begin at the Spoleto Cathedral, set on an elevated piazza that feels grand but also intimate. The cathedral's facade is elegant and restrained, but it's the interior that truly commands your attention. Here you'll find incredibly beautiful frescoes by Filippo Lippi. They're among the most emotional and resonant works of the Renaissance in Umbria. Lippi's frescoes depict the life of the Virgin Mary with remarkable softness and humanity. Figures are tender, gestures are natural. Knowing that Lippi completed these works near the end of his life adds an extra layer of poignancy to the experience. He's buried here in Spoleto, just beneath his masterpiece. From the cathedral, make your way toward one of Spoleto's most unforgettable landmarks, the Ponte delle Torri. This massive medieval structure once served as an aqueduct and bridge, spanning a deep, wooded gorge. Walking across it feels almost unreal. The scale is immense, the views are sweeping, and the silence is broken only by the wind and the birds. Beyond the bridge, Spoleto continues to reward exploration. You can climb higher toward the fortress above the city for panoramic views, or wander the lower streets where cafes, artisan shops, and quiet piazzas invite you to slow down. We bought some incredible Umbrian olive oil here. Absolutely delicious. And the owner was the farmer. Spoleto does have a train station with direct connections to Rome and other Umbrian cities, making it one of the more accessible day trips in the region. From Assisi, you could reach Spoleto by train with a change. However, the station sits below the historic center, so then you need to take a bus or taxi or hike uphill to reach the sites. As a day trip from Assisi, it adds scale and contrast, rounding out the Umbrian experience. Another town we visited, and it's very close, is called Spello. It's just about 15 minutes by car and 10 minutes on the train. The drive alone is lovely, winding through olive groves and gentle hills before arriving in one of Umbria's most graceful small towns. Spello is compact, elegant, and beautifully maintained. The heart of the town is the Baglioni Chapel, located inside the Church of Saint Mary Major, Santa Maria Maggiore. The chapel contains one of the most joyful and refined fresco cycles of the Renaissance, painted by Pinturicchio at the beginning of the 16th century. Unlike the dramatic intensity of Assisi or the apocalyptic power of Orvieto, Pinturicchio's frescoes are luminous and decorative. Scenes from the life of Christ and the Virgin unfold across the walls in rich color, delicate detail, and balanced composition. Gold accents catch the light. Figures feel graceful rather than strained. The overall effect is almost uplifting, almost musical, and offers a beautiful contrast to the solemnity and spirituality of nearby Assisi. Beyond the chapel, there's also Roman history that's still visible in the town's ancient gates, including the Porta Venere, flanked by medieval towers and remnants of Roman walls. From the upper edges of town, views open across the Umbrian Valley, revealing vineyards and fields and distant hill towns. Spello does have a small train station, and it's one of the easier trips from Assisi by public transport, though schedules can be limited. As with much of Umbria, having a car allows greater flexibility. But Spello is still accessible if you can rely on trains or local buses. As far as festivals, the most important festival in Assisi is called Calendi Maggio. It's the city's most important and most spectacular festival. Held each year in May, Candeli Maggio is a medieval reenactment that transforms Assisi into a living stage. For several days, the city is divided into two historic factions, the Parte di Sopra and the Parte di Sotto. That's the part above and the part below, each representing different neighborhoods of Assisi. What unfolds is not a simple parade or costume event, but a full immersion into medieval rivalry, beauty, and pride. The festival's roots stretch back to the Middle Ages, when the arrival of spring was celebrated with music and flowers and courtly displays. Over time, the seasonal celebrations evolved into structured competition that defines the festival today. Throughout the city, daily life gives way to pageantry. Streets fill with musicians playing period instruments. Flags ripple above stone piazzas. Processions move through the historic center with participants dressed in meticulously crafted medieval costumes. Every detail, from fabrics to choreography, is researched, rehearsed, and deeply intentional. One of the most anticipated elements of Candeli Maggio is the evening performances. Each faction stages elaborate theatrical presentations that combine music, poetry, and storytelling, all rooted in medieval themes. These performances take place in open-air settings, often under torchlight, creating an atmosphere that feels both dramatic and timeless. Judges evaluate each side on historical accuracy, artistic quality, music, and overall presentation. The competition is serious, but also joyful. What makes this festival special is the setting. The performances unfold beneath Assisi's towers, along streets that have changed very little since the Middle Ages. Unlike festivals staged for tourists, Candeli Maggio belongs to the people of Assisi. The participants prepare for months, and families pass down roles and traditions from one generation to the next. For visitors, experiencing this festival means seeing Assisi at its most animated. The quiet stone city you suddenly know sings, moves, and glows into the night. Restaurants stay open longer, the energy spills from piazzas into side streets. The contrast between Assisi's unusual stillness and this brief explosion of color and sound makes the festival unforgettable. If you're planning to visit, know that accommodations do fill up quickly and reservations are essential. If you can time your trip to coincide with Candeli Maggio, you'll experience a side of Assisi that few visitors get to see, a city rooted in peace and briefly and beautifully celebrating its medieval soul. I've been blessed to witness the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, which is celebrated on October 4th and reveals the city's spiritual side. St. Francis died here in 1226, and Assisi has marked his life and legacy ever since. On his feast day, the city becomes a place of pilgrimage, prayer, and reflection, drawing visitors across Italy and around the world who come to participate. The heart of the celebration takes place at the Basilica of St. Francis, where Francis is buried. The day centers on solemn liturgies, including important masses, and one of the most symbolic moments is the lighting of the votive lamps by representatives of Italian regions, emphasizing St. Francis's role as the patron saint of all of Italy. Throughout the day, smaller events unfold across the city. Reflections, gatherings, and many visitors choose to walk portions of the Via di San Francesco, turning the feast into a personal journey and pilgrimage event. For travelers experiencing Assisi on October 4th, it offers something rare. You see the city not as a museum, but as a living spiritual center. Shops may be closed or have shorter hours, but the focus is inward, not outward. If Candeli Maggio celebrates Assisi's medieval identity, the Feast of St. Francis celebrates the soul of the city. I also want to mention possible experiences in town. One of the things you're going to see across Umbria is pottery. The best place to experience this is just outside the city in the town called Deruta, about 30 minutes by car. Deruta has been producing ceramics since the Middle Ages, and it's one of the most important pottery centers in Italy. Here, you can visit working studios and in some cases participate in hands-on workshops where artisans teach traditional techniques from hand painting to glazing. The patterns are distinctive: bold blues, yellows, and geometric motifs rooted in centuries of Umbrian design. Even a short visit offers a tangible connection to the region's artistic heritage. Deruta is reachable by train from nearby towns, but having a car makes it a bit easier. Another deeply meaningful experience tied to Assisi is walking a portion of the Via di San Francesco, the pilgrimage route dedicated to St. Francis. This isn't a single trail, but a networks of paths stretching across Umbria and into Tuscany and even Lazio. You don't have to commit to a full pilgrimage to experience it. Many visitors choose a half-day or single-day walk through olive groves, forests, and quiet countryside just outside Assisi. The experience is less about distance and more about intention. Silence, nature, and reflection are part of the journey. I will mention that food and wine experiences throughout Umbria are a great way to get to know the city. Umbrian classics such as lentils, truffles, olive oil, and simple pasta dishes. Some nearby agriturismi or farm stays offer tastings, farm visits, and particularly focused on olive oil, which has been produced in the region since Roman times. I also want to mention Santa Maria degli Angeli. I mentioned it as that's where the train station is, but this town is also very tied to the life of St. Francis. This is where Francis lived, prayed, and ultimately died. And in many ways, it's where his story truly begins. At the center of the massive Basilica of Santa Maria degli Angeli is something surprisingly small, the Porziuncola. The Porziuncola is a tiny stone chapel, humble and unassuming, preserved inside a much larger Renaissance basilica, like a jewel protected by a reliquary. This is the place St. Francis rebuilt with his own hands. It's where he founded the Franciscan order. It's where St. Clare received her religious vocation, and where Francis asked to be brought during his final days. The basilica is vast, designed to accommodate pilgrims from around the world. Inside, everything draws you back to the Porziuncola. Its rough stones, low ceiling, and simple altar reflect Francis's radical embrace of poverty and humility. Nearby is the transit chapel, the room where St. Francis died in 1226. Many visitors describe it as one of the most emotionally powerful places in Assisi, precisely because it is so simple. Santa Maria degli Angeli is also where major celebrations tied to St. Francis take place, especially around his feast day. Pilgrims gather here as well at the Basilica of St. Francis, creating a spiritual axis between the valley and the hilltop. Together, these sites tell the complete story: Francis the man, Francis the saint, and Francis the symbol. As we wrap up this episode on Assisi, I hope you can feel just how different the city is. This is a place that stays with you long after you've left its quiet streets and stone walls behind. If you'd like to explore Assisi further, I've created the associated blog with additional details, walking around, some practical notes that you can find at caterinaferrara.com/blogs. It's a great companion to the episode and a helpful resource if you're planning your own visit. I'm also currently writing the Umbria Travel Guide, the ultimate festival and travel guide Umbria, which will dive deeper into Assisi, Orvieto, Spoleto, Spello, and beyond, including immersive walking tours, history, accommodations, restaurant recommendations. I can't wait to share it with you. And if you'd like ongoing inspiration, festival updates, or behind-the-scenes travel insights, please sign up for my free Immersion Travel Italy newsletter. It's where I share upcoming episodes, new information, festivals, etc. The sign-up is on my website. Thanks for spending time with me today in Assisi and Umbria. The next Regional Capitals of Italy series episode will be for Le Marche. These come out each Friday. Thank you for traveling with me. This is Immersion Travel Italy. Let the cities tell their stories.